Hey guys, it's Brad, back in the booth, aka my car. Just wanted to jump on and talk a little bit about Perfect Order. It's been out for a minute now. You've kind of gotten all of the feedback or reaction, I guess, to it up to this point, but I don't know, just kind of wanted to throw my little 2 cents into it and kind of discuss sort of the reaction, the response to the set release, maybe what it means going forward. I think it went about as well as it could have went. There wasn't a lot of hype for the set. I think a lot of people, generally speaking, view it as kind of a weaker set, and history is really only going to dictate what it truly becomes down the road. But currently, it's basically the most affordable newer set on the market. It's one of the most affordable sets, period, in the entire TCG. Booster boxes are sitting about $200, which is probably higher than a lot of people wanted to see, but I think a lot of people too were anticipating booster boxes being more heavily printed, and as we've seen up to this point, Pokemon's not really printing booster boxes. So I think that initial wave might be all we get, but honestly, at those prices, that's fine. So like I said, they're sitting around 200. Booster bundles are, $8-10 above MSRP. Your ETBs are $10 above MSRP, the regular ones. The Pokemon Center ETBs are about double MSRP. And we may not get any more of those, so who knows. A lot of people that I have interacted with about sort of how they feel about Perfect Order and what they were targeting from the set basically said Pokemon Center ETB, and that's basically it for me, or a couple. Booster boxes, some people are still after booster boxes because that is the cornerstone product for mainline sets, I think, but most people probably covet the PC ETB, I think, on perceived weaker sets like Perfect Order. And the only reason that I'm even referring to it as a weaker set, if we're being honest, it is because of the cards that are in the set. I don't think that long term a Meowth SIR, a Zygarde SIR, Mega Clefable, or Starmie is going to carry the set long term. I do think that a lot of people, including myself, want those cards, but I don't think there's going to be any sealed premium based on the fact that those cards are in there. And because a lot of product is probably getting opened, I'd have to guess, from Perfect Order. Again, there are people that are going to collect it because it's what they can find, it's what they have access to. But I don't think long term a lot of people are going to be collecting or keeping that set sealed. So I think it's fair to anticipate that a lot of product's going to be opened, in which case you would think that the Meowth and the Starmie and the Zygarde, the Clefairy IR is actually really awesome. That's one that I'd like to have at some point too. So you would think that those cards are going to become cheaper the longer the set's out. It's a small set, only 120 some cards, I think. I know Meowth is 121. I don't truthfully know off the top of my head if it goes any higher than that. But yeah, so seemingly prices will come down even further. You know, the SIRs and basically all the cards are off of, you know, the pre-release price, which is pretty typical. You generally don't want to pay whatever that pre-release price is. I guess if you had some sort of grading play in mind, maybe that's the only way you could make it reasonable. You could justify it, but you know, I'm not paying pre-release prices for anything, much less perfect order. And like I said, I'm not here to crap on it. I think if we're objectively looking at it compared to what's come out recently, what's still on the schedule to come out, it's going to be perceived as a weaker set. I would probably liken it to Battle Styles, probably. If we're keeping it a buck, we're probably looking at it's going to be comparable probably to Battle Styles in the long run. Just kind of on that same tier, I guess. And you know, that's fine, but like I said, I don't know that it's going to be truly investable as a sealed product. I think some of the singles have some room. The singles have some room to come down. I truly believe they will. More. I mean, like I said, they already have, but I think they're going to come down a little bit more. And then, you know, I don't even know what to expect in this current market as a bottom for like the Meowth. But I mean, it's a, I think last I looked, it was like $180 card or something. Zygarde is around 100. Starmie's around 180 something, I think. So yeah, I just don't feel like for those specific Pokemon, I just don't think even like a special illustration rare warrants those kind of prices, especially, I mean, not yet. Like I said, maybe in the future, but that just, it feels like an overpay currently. Especially when, you know, like I said, if you look at the Mega Zygarde, for example, it's over $100. There's numerous cards throughout the TCG that you could spend that same money on, and so it just feels a little high for a Mega Zygarde, even though that is the mascot for the set, and so on and so forth. But like I said, I'm just personally not paying those prices at the moment. If I can find some for retail, I'd probably open it. I mean, I have opened it. I've only opened 2 packs. My wife bought a few packs, and you know, one of my kids opened it with her, and so I think between the 3 of us, we opened a total of 9 packs or something, and that was all available at release. And in fact, I bought the 2 packs that I got because my Target has a limit of 2 items, or 2 per SKU limit. I found mine on, it was either Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday after the initial release. And so, you know, that just kind of points to the sort of the underwhelming popularity of it. But that was anticipated. I think people were talking about this for a while and how nobody was really super pumped for it. I mean, like I said, there are cool cards in the set, but nothing that's going to carry, like a Charizard from Phantasmal or any of the Ascended Heroes cards, chases. You know, you can name a set and it's top chase, and it's probably more desirable by more people than the perfect order chases. So I think that the product's going to be available for a little while, depending on Pokemon's print schedule for it. There may become a time where it becomes scarce, but even then, I feel like people will have already kind of gotten their fill of it. And I say that because, like I said, it's been available. All of the online drops, Target, Walmart last night had the 3-pack blister packs sitting there for retail after the line cleared out from the online drop, from the queue. So I just feel like it's going to be there. And, I mean, there's been more desirable sets, or more popular sets, I should say, not necessarily desirable, because that's subjective. That is whatever your opinion is. But there's been more popular items from more popular sets that, quite frankly, sat online in the last year that, if they dropped even today, would get gobbled up in a second. And so, like I said, I think people are going to rip it because it's there. It scratches the itch. There are some cards that people want. But like I said, long term, I just don't see it becoming a thing. And when, during this, hype phase that we're in, however long that lasts, it would be easy to sell on the secondary market, I think. Like I said, booster boxes are a couple $100. I think you could get $200 for a booster box. But the thing is, if you paid, even if you got it for MSRP, you're just turning around to sell it for a $40 profit. If you can get full market, that doesn't make a lot of sense. At that point, you're probably better off just holding on to it. But the thing about Perfect Order, and the reason that I say it's the response to it so far has been kind of perfect out of the gate, is because Perfect Order and actually the next few sets that are scheduled to come out, they're smaller sets. Like I said, Perfect Order has 120 some cards in it. Ascended Heroes, for example, is, what is it, like 600 cards or something? It's an insane, huge set. So most people probably aren't master set collectors anymore. There are still some, but given just the sheer number of cards that Pokemon, that's in the set that would require a reprint. I mean, just the actual number of cards in the set. To actually reprint that set over and over and over again, it's going to require less out of the company. And so I feel like, given that this is a small set, and the next, few, I think, are projected to be small sets, you would assume that once they knock out that initial wave, and that's sort of independent of how many units they can get out at release. But I feel like a reprint is going to be easier to achieve for a smaller set. I mean, that just, to me, that makes sense in my head. I don't know what their process is for determining what goes into a reprint, but I'm just thinking of it from, if there's fewer cards in the set that you need to print, then a reprint should be easier to achieve, right? So I feel like with these smaller sets, it's not going to curb the demand. I mean, the demand's still going to be there. It's still, Perfect Order still sells. It's not available today, but it's the last thing off the shelf, right? I mean, and then, like I said, at release, it was available basically everywhere you went. There wasn't lines waiting to get the Perfect Order product. So, since reprints of this maybe are going to be easier to achieve, and maybe you can, like I said, sort of meet the demand initially, if you can achieve that out the gate, then I feel like it might be easier for them to catch up when it comes to reprinting things that have already released. Your Ascended Heroes, your Phantasmal Flames, your Destined Rivals, perhaps they can allocate more resources to reprinting those sets if all they have coming out for the foreseeable future is smaller sets. And also, too, if those smaller sets happen to not be as in demand, then they'll figure that out probably pretty quickly and be able to even, reallocate those resources to reprinting more in demand sets. And so I think when people say, I mean, there's been a lot of hyperbole, people, we need some bad sets to crash the market. Well, I don't know that you're going to crash the market because you released a quote bad set. But I think that if, just from a sheer numbers aspect, A, if it's a smaller set, and B, if it's a less desirable set, you don't have to spend as much time reprinting that set. You don't have to put as much energy and company resources into reprinting that set. And so maybe that's kind of what they're getting at. Maybe when people say we need crappy sets to crash the market, maybe that's what they mean, and they're just saying it because it's cheeky to say we need crappy sets. But Pokemon does not plan crappy sets. Like, they just don't do that. They're still in the business of making money. And so if it's a set that's perceived to be not as strong by the consumer, then maybe that will work out in that way, but not because Pokemon just specifically decided to put out a crappy set. They said, they're not, like I said, they're not sitting in their boardroom thinking, how can we tank our product? They're not doing that. What they are doing, though, is they're trying to be strategic about where their resources and go to, how they allocate their resources to meeting the demand of what sets people do desire. And so, like I said, maybe that's kind of a backwards way that they kind of achieve this sort of situation, achieve that situation to kind of like quell the demand for the new set. I don't know if that was something that was planned as far as like intentionally making this a small set. I don't, you hear that these sets are planned out for years, let's say, and they probably are to some degree, but I don't know. I can't imagine that they have all the details planned out even 2 years in advance. I feel like they leave themselves a little bit of leeway there to sort of make changes before they really ramp up and get things out for release. And so you would imagine that, here we are, this is April. Well, that set came out the very end of March, but we're in April now. And just look at Prismatic, for example. That came out in, January of 25, very beginning of 25. And so, or the very end of 24, shoot, I can't remember now. But anyway, Prismatic's been out for whatever, year and a half, okay? And that was kind of what started this current like hype phase that we're in. And so you would think that they would go back and kind of watch the market data on that, see the sell through, and say, oh, okay, well this set's pretty popular, so at some point we're going to have to adjust things down the road to be able to allocate more resources to printing Prismatic, for example. And obviously they have. I mean, I feel like they've done a really good job printing Prismatic. I have been able to personally, I've been able to find every Prismatic product that I cared to spend the money on. And I mean, except for the SPC, I have not seen a single SPC anywhere for a price that I am willing to pay. That is, but everything else, I mean, I've had access to, just using myself as an example, and I think a lot of people have had access to the majority of the SKUs from Prismatic. And so that just kind of goes to show you that they've already sort of been able to sort of meet demand. Like I said, again, it's the prices are still up, and it's still an in-print set, and I get that. But, understanding everything about the current market and the demand and the amount of product that's getting opened in the past year and a half in particular, it makes sense that they can't print enough to get the prices back down to even MSRP, for example. But, if you could get ETBs back down, and they've kind of shown that they're pushing down. But, just getting the prices down demonstrates that they're printing enough to at least affect the market. And like I said, we're not probably ever going to get back to MSRP on something that was printed a year and a half ago. I don't know that that's reasonable today. But I think what they might be able to start to do with these smaller sets is, like I said, if they can knock out the waves of the smaller sets, and if they're sort of satisfied with the demand, then they can sort of audible and go back and really start, hopefully, focusing on the sets that really need it. And so, like I said, I don't think that people are just going to not buy Perfect Order. I think they're absolutely going to buy it, especially if they walk in and that's what's there. People are going to buy it. Personally, I'm sticking with the Pokemon Center ETB for this set as far as sealed is concerned, and then go with or watch the singles and hope that, or like I said, I'll open it, but my main goal is to grab the few singles that I want. And that kind of brings me to, I guess, maybe the counter argument. Like I said earlier, I don't think the Zygarde should be over 100. I don't think the Meowth, truthfully, I don't think that should be over 100 right now. I don't think the Starmie should be near 100, just as an example. But if everybody else is literally looking at this the way that I'm looking at it, then the demand for those cards is there's still going to be demand for those cards. So, but kind of what I mentioned earlier, I do feel like a lot of this is going to get opened, and it's going to get opened by real true collectors. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people just piling up, hoarding product and opening it to, for grading plays and things like that. I mean, there will be some, but I do feel like this is going to be more for the casual person who just walks in, sees it sitting on the shelf, it's there, and so they buy it. And that's how I think that most people are going to approach this set. And so, like I said, I think everybody's pretty well targeting the same 3 or 4 cards. So we'll have to see what that does to the price, but you'd have to think that over time that price is gonna come down, because the sealed price, for example, it's reasonable. It's near MSRP, and you're going to be able to find it at MSRP. And so it doesn't make sense for the singles to kind of stay up. So, we'll have to see how it goes, but that's kind of my approach. Like I said, just go for the 3 or 4 cards that I want. Hold on to the PC ETB for a while and see how that goes. And truthfully, I think the big winners, which you had to pay a little bit more up front because you had to go to GameStop, but I think the big winners were the ones that got that Gengar promo, the GameStop exclusive Gengar promo. Those people are pretty happy because that card's well over $100, and I think it's climbing. I don't know that it's retraced a bit, so those people are happy. I didn't manage to get one because I haven't been to GameStop in a few weeks, and I typically don't buy from GameStop just because their prices are a little scary at the moment. But, if I happen to stumble in there and they're still handing them out for one reason or the next, I don't imagine they will be. But, I'll take the promo if they got them, and maybe I'll buy something then, or make the decision to buy something then. But anyway, like I said, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of touch on not necessarily Perfect Order as a set and how I feel about the set personally. I just kind of wanted to, brainstorm a little bit about sort of what I think maybe this set and the next few sets to come might do for increasing product allocation, increasing production for the previous sets. I hope that, that's my genuine hope, is that they can get to a spot where they feel good about the demand for Perfect Order, and then when Chaos Rising comes out, and then whatever is beyond that, because they really do have a lot of sets that were released within the last year or two that need desperate reprints and very sizable reprints, but also they're going to have to allocate a lot to getting the 30th anniversary stuff printed, because if there's one thing I can almost guarantee, it's that they absolutely want people to be able to get the 30th anniversary product. They want that 30th anniversary product in as many hands as humanly possible. And they printed the 25th for, we were finding celebrations for a year or two after its initial release. And I think that maybe even longer than that. I remember buying celebrations. I probably bought celebrations in 2023. I think I was still finding it at Walmart in 2023 even. And so, that just goes to show you the sort of demand they're expecting, but also too, they absolutely want people to have the anniversary sets, because they know that's what is driving people to the hobby, especially during times when they know an anniversary set's coming out. So I'm just hopeful that these smaller sets will allow them to catch up, and I think that's basically my take on Perfect Order. It doesn't matter to me if it's perceived as a strong set or a weak set. It's just the fact that it's a small set, and hopefully we can, it's my genuine hope that every time you walk into Walmart or Target, it's still sitting there, but that people see it, buy it, because like I said, it scratches the itch, gives them something to open while they're not able to get the other stuff. And then, maybe, just maybe, we'll get caught up on some of this other stuff, these other sets that we're waiting for. So I think that's it for today. Like I said, just wanted to share a little bit with you, and we will talk to you later.